All right, well, welcome to Chop It Up for this latest edition here in January 18th. And my name is Kevin, host of this here podcast and videocast, welcoming you all to this conversation, which it's going to be an interesting one. I'll let the fellas introduce themselves, and then I'll give my disclaimers, and we will jump into it.
Disclaimers. Tari Watkins, Oklahoma City, and just one musical number for y'all today. And I said it right before we came on air, so this is nothing new for the fellas. The motto today, the theme song is "Just put your spit on it," and that's it. Hey, that's all I got.
Hey.
Oh, Darian Lewis from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Kevin, I am surprised you didn't have Prince bring us in. You know, with
Yes, that would have been great. That would have been great.
Well, as I was preparing the kind of getting the topic together, we know what the topic is, but as I was kind of thinking of what to call this episode, I was like "Spit in the Name of Love," which is what we called it. But I was also talking about spit and game.
Spit games.
Spit heard around the world. So
Oh my god!
we had a few different titles to play with. All right, so let me
Spitageddon.
Hey,
Spitgate.
so I wanted to, as folks are
Lord
coming
of
in,
the
I wanted
Rings,
to,
Fellowship
or
of
as
the
you're watching,
Spits.
on the
The
replay,
Empire
recap,
spits
whatever.
back.
He won't quit. He can't stop.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm done.
All right,
Spitception.
Mute him, man. You got the power, brother.
Avengers Spit Game.
See? Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
Click.
Go ahead. I'm done.
All right,
Tori
so
will be right back.
here's the thing. I wanted to, one, for those that are watching live right now, as well as for those that may be watching on the replay recap, I want to kind of set the tone for our conversation. I want to make sure, because we're going to talk about the viral video that went out on Sunday, Pastor Michael Todd out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And if you haven't seen it, you're under a rock somewhere, because I think all of the world has seen it. All right. So a couple of things. One, if you came on expecting us to bash, expecting us to drop tea,
Nope.
to do all of that, keep it moving. Not the place for that.
That's right.
Just as far as also full disclosure, because one of the things I also do is I want to give is full disclosure. I've known Michael Todd personally. My wife and I, the church that is now Transformation Church, my wife and I were serving there for 9 years or so.
Yep.
Last role we had was essentially lead discipleship teachers, where we taught pretty much everything there until they decided they no longer wanted to teach discipleship in the format that they were doing it. We left on great terms. We left knowing, as far as even with the transition before Michael Todd became pastor, we left with the blessing of the leader that was in place at the time, Bishop Gary McIntosh. I say I've known Michael Todd. We haven't had conversation in probably those 7 years since we've moved here to Phoenix. But just full disclosure, I've known him. I know who he is. We served together. Darian can even attest. We worked, but in the sound booth, Michael was the musical director for the church. I basically was handling the the graphics and the video and all of that stuff as far as the presentation on Sunday morning. So full conversations, we've had those before. So I can speak to who Michael Todd is as a person, in spite of what everything that you may have seen in that 1 3-minute clip. With that said, we're going to talk about that whole thing, and we'll just kind of go from there. And I'll just kind of jump it off where I had seen the clip, and I texted the brothers. I texted Tori and Darian. I was like, all right, which one of y'all going to let me spit on you for a sermon topic or sermon illustration?
You better be glad I'm saved, bro. You better be glad I'm saved.
What's happened since then? The world has erupted, right? There's been a lot of things that have been said regarding Michael Todd, his character, all that stuff. We're not here to throw any more flame on the fire. We're here to have an adult conversation from men who love God, understand things, right? Michael Todd has since put out a video where he said, you know what?
Yep.
It was over the top. It was disgusting.
He admitted it. Yeah.
It was something that probably should not have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So there's now been this whole thing of, well, we need to quote unquote cancel Mike Todd. He needs to sit down somewhere. So we've heard that, right? Then on the other side, now we've also heard there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. And if you read your Bibles, you would know that God says, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm, which if you read your Bible, you'll understand that you're taking that scripture out of context and applying it to a small group of people when it was designed for all of the anointed. And if you are a believer in Christ, you're anointed.
That's right.
So we're going to have that conversation, and I'm going to let the guys kind of jump in and kind of give their thoughts. But this is kind of where we're talking today.
Is there anything else to add?
I don't think. I think we pretty much touched on all of it. I mean,
anything else to add? I mean, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and see you next week. I'm
100% in agreement with you, Kev, on everything you said. No, we're not canceling Mike Todd. I'm sorry. No, we're not doing that. That's not going to happen. I just want to let everybody know, you mean to tell me that there's never been a time in your life, whether you're in front of 100,000 people or in front of 2 people, that you haven't done something that was over the top and you need to ask for forgiveness? If you haven't, please step forward. Please let me know, because we're human. We make mistakes. He apologized, and I do believe that the apology was genuine. Mm-hmm. The point he was trying to make was correct. The illustration and what he chose to do, that was over the top. That should have. It doesn't negate the word. It doesn't negate the message. It doesn't negate who he is. It doesn't negate his ministry. It doesn't negate that he's a man of God. It doesn't mean that he needs to sit down just because he did something that was over the top. It's not like the man sinned. Yeah, he went over the top. He shouldn't have done that. Not most likely. He just shouldn't have. I get it. I get the point he was trying to make, and it was a valid point, but not to the point that we need to call for the man's cloth. All preachers are scammers. It doesn't need to get into any of that. And then for us in the church that are starting to do that, maybe we need to reevaluate ourselves. Maybe it's time for some self-reflection, because we've all done something that we've regretted and had to apologize for. It just so happened that this man did it on the pulpit, and it was caught on camera. And guess what? He apologized, because once he thought back and looked at it, it was over the top. I shouldn't have done it. So, and I'm saying it for the folks in the back too. Just to let you know, saying that for everybody. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean the the facts to me are very obviously very clear. Nothing as far as that is concerned. I will say this: some things that since I do live here. And I'm connected to a number of people. Actually, most of us, the 3 of us are, but I'm connected to a number of people who are members.
Yeah.
I was also with Kevin, a member. Has it been 7 years? Has it been that long? I think I left maybe. I think I left maybe. You said 9 years for you?
It'll be 9 years in July since we.
Okay,
left.
So I've probably got 7 or 8 that I've not been a part of or connected to as membership Transformation Church. but I'm still very much connected to, and have had the opportunity to have conversation with Mike on a couple of occasions since then. Pastor Mike, I definitely want to make sure that the respect remains.
Exactly.
Because I don't want anybody to get anything misconstrued here.
Right.
However, two things that I've discovered. Number one, he's done this illustration before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't make it good or bad, but it's just that he's done it before. Though the world didn't call for his head.
Right.
The first time it happened. And what was amazing to me was all the members that I'm directly connected with weren't really shocked by what they saw. They were, it's an over the top illustration. I don't care how many times you do it. It's just
it's still
graphic and in your face. I mean, just but they were a bit prepared for it because it wasn't necessarily a new scenario. Now, again, it doesn't make it good, doesn't make it bad. I'm just simply saying the idea that all of a sudden now he's not saved. I've seen pastors question his salvation, whether or not he truly is of God and from God and all of this stuff. And I have to mention something that I saw with Bishop Carlton Pearson, who basically raised him on some levels. And he mentioned, the fact that, again, even though things are over the top, to question the man's sincerity, is absurd.
It is.
It's absolutely absurd. So, will he recover? Well, let me just say this: there's nothing is better than some good controversy.
Yeah.
Because controversy will let you know real quick who's actually in your corner.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Who's bandwagon?
Who's just there for the ride?
Who's there for the ride? And who's really like has the maturity to say, hey, yeah, you probably shouldn't have done that.
Right.
But we're gonna keep it moving. We're not gonna park here.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, if you think about it, and the way I look at it is this way: if you had an issue with Mike Todd before this, it just simply fed that fire that gave fuel to that.
Of course.
If you rocked with Michael Todd before that, and you really rocked with Michael Todd before that, then you're going to look at it and say, "Yep, shouldn't have happened, shouldn't have done it," and move forward, right? Because if I can just be honest, there's some pastors that I've served that I have great affinity for, that I love, I completely respect, but I can't say that I've agreed with everything that they've done.
Of course.
There have been some things that I've been like, of course, I might not have done it that way. Right? Doesn't negate the fact that, because again, he didn't fall. Right? This Michael Todd did not fall. He didn't sin. He used an illustration that was graphic, that was disgusting, that was all of those things that we keep saying, right? We keep hearing, but none of it came from a place of I hate God, I hate his people, and I'm going to do this to turn you away. Did he even recognize, because he also said, in his video, he recognized that it allowed him to become a distraction.
Yes.
And I think that's important also to take into account, that the goal of any minister, the goal of anyone who preaches the gospel, is to accurately, even as they put it at Transformation, to represent Christ. That's the goal. That's the function. That's what we're called to do. And so you recognize, and I think he recognized, that in this moment, in trying to represent Christ, he put himself in the middle of the story instead of letting Christ be the center of the story. Right.
You mentioned something there, Kev, about if you've rocked with Pastor Todd, or if you haven't rocked with Pastor Todd, your decisions really aren't going to be swayed. The group of believers that I'm concerned about, and the ones that I'm talking with, are the ones in the middle, because those are the ones. Those are the ones like me. I've never met Pastor Todd. I haven't been to Transformation. I've been to GCC, but I haven't been to Transformation. And I know a lot of people that are there and that have been there and that have been there before in the past. So I'm one of the ones in the middle. So I'm looking at it from my perspective. We have to be mature enough to understand what's going on as believers. The ones that don't really, don't really follow Pastor Todd are the ones that or on the opposite side, the ones that don't have any issues with him. I mean, that's where I am. And so we're the ones that have to be even more careful, because when we start saying things like cancel him or I don't believe what he said, at this point, are we taking it at face value, or are we jumping to conclusions and judging at that point, and then just going with the wave of what people are hearing? If you listen to the message and you listen to what he said, there was nothing, from what I saw, it wasn't taken out of context. He was doing an illustration and applying it to our everyday life and saying, guess what? Sometimes the things that God has us do, blesses us with or has us do, it's going to be nasty. We don't like it. I don't like it. But there's been times that God has told me many things. I'm like, what'd you want me to do again? And sometimes that's been my I remember driving down the expressway, and there God spoke to me. It was right after Ashley and I had done Amy's Ashes in 2016, and I was like, okay, man. I said, I got it. You ain't got to talk to me that way. That's literally my conversation.
Wait, you mean you talk to God like that? And God didn't strike you down?
No, he didn't strike me down. I'm like, okay. I'm literally like, okay, yes, okay, fine. I get it. I know. Yes, you're right. And so we have to understand that we have to be mature about it.
Right.
We have to weigh it for what it is. And we have to make sure that we step back, take a look at the big picture, and then analyze the word for what it was. Was the man ministering? Yes, he was. Did he do an illustration that was over the top? Of course he did. But did he take the word out of context? No. That's what's important to me. Was the word taken out of context? If it was not, then okay, guess what? He made a mistake. Move on, everybody. Take your bags of popcorn, go watch something else, because this is not the show for you.
Right.
I mean, even excuse me, even when you know, whether the word was in context or out of context, and a lot of times, and I'm not trying to negate what you just said, because I absolutely agree. The activity, the behavior, the the action that took place requires. This is another good test of just what you said, maturity.
Yes.
You know, and this is what's funny to me. I know a few. I only know a few, but the few rich people that I know could care less.
Couldn't care less.
Could like at
Couldn't
all
care less. Yes.
No. Whichever way you want to put it. Take your pick. Okay, seriously, because
right.
My point in saying that is, and even bringing that up is because there is a point of perspective that gets lost when it comes to anything. You know, I want to take it further. Anything controversial, because I don't remember seeing this level of a call for cancel of a preacher, even those that were caught in sin recently. And that's the stuff that makes me go, okay, where is this double standard coming from? That is what's probably, and I made a post because I
saw it. So you mean you're confused as to why we haven't canceled someone who doesn't get invited back to churches because they've slept with most of the people that has been at the church that they've been visiting.
Watch it, Kev. Watch it, Kev.
We haven't canceled those who we have identified that some of the words that they have given as far as prophetic words came straight from witches. We haven't canceled pastors who are on their 6th accusation of marital infidelity. You mean you're surprised that we haven't canceled those that we know have stolen money from the church? Is that what you're telling me? You're surprised by that?
Absolutely.
We haven't canceled pastors that kick people in the chest when they're praying for them either. We haven't canceled them. We are my little Facebook conversation that I had with my why are your knees locked? Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead. My bad. I'm sorry, Darren. Go ahead, man. That's my bad.
What stopped me was I thought you were literally talking to me like, wait, no, you're not talking to me. And then it dawned on me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm slow, but I eventually get there. Yes.
You're worth waiting on, brother. You're
Thank
worth
you.
waiting
Thank
on.
you. I appreciate that.
Yes,
I
sir.
feel valued.
But no, we're there. This whole idea of canceling Michael Todd makes absolutely no sense. From the and again, you may be the way I look at it. Put it this way: is that he may not be everybody's cup of tea. If we can just be honest,
and that's okay.
He's not supposed to
and
be.
if we look at the church, if we're honest, there are those who are like, Mike, who?
Right.
Can we deal with that? So the fact that we're trying to say that his impact is the impact of this is so devastating to the body, and that he needs to be canceled. I think that we have to really take a look and see, okay, we're looking at it from your viewpoint and what you have seen, because we're not even talking about pastors in Africa that will literally lay hands on you to beat the devil out of you, right?
Literally.
And that's acceptable there because of the culture. So when we're looking at this whole thing with Todd, at the end of the day, he may not be everybody's cup of tea. And I say that I've known him. I haven't listened to a full Mike Todd sermon in quite some time. Doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the value that he brings to the body. We're just in two different rivers, if you will, right?
Yes.
There are pastors that I listen to faithfully every Sunday. My wife and I, when we're making breakfast, what have you, we'll listen to this group of pastors. Doesn't mean that they're the only ones. It just means that those are the ones that we are drawn to.
Yes.
There are those that are drawn to Mike Todd who love what he does. And there are those that don't rock. I don't rock with Joyce Meyer. Doesn't mean that she's not an amazing woman of God.
Exactly.
She's just not my cup of tea.
Darian, you're cracking me.
I know. I need to quit.
No, you don't. Don't quit. Don't ever stop, brother. But this is, and I know I've said this before. I think I said it once before. I think it was last year. I can't remember. And this is for anybody that's out there that may be thinking that we need to cancel him. He's not a man of God, or his ministry is being negated. I mean, I still think back, and like I said, I'm big on self-reflection. So I think back on my life and how I got saved. I got saved because my mom got saved. My dad got saved because my mom got saved. My mom got saved because she was watching, praise the Lord, Jim Bakker. So does that mean she's not saved because she was watching Jim Bakker because all the bad things that he did? It doesn't negate his ministry. I don't think it does. If it does, then that means my mom, my dad, myself, anybody else that I've influenced and brought to Christ, that we're all going to hell in the handbasket. Then.
Wait, can I take it even further?
Go for it.
Even further?
Yeah.
Peter cut off someone's ear in
Bro,
defense of Jesus.
Paul killed people.
Peter is the one who the church is built upon as far as what would maybe be considered the first primary apostle, right? And Paul killed several in defense of what he thought, right?
Yes.
More than a few, right?
Yes,
so
more than a few.
Those two, everything is negated because of what they did. We all in trouble.
Yes, we are. So we have to, and this goes back to what I said before. We have to be mature enough. And again, I'm not calling people out there saying that they're childish, but I'm gonna call it for what it is. If we can't be mature enough to recognize that a mistake is a mistake, then I don't know what other conversation that we can have.
Right.
Because at that point, you're not being realistic. You're really throwing stones at that point, kind of what Jesus did. Those without sin cast the first stone. This is no different. We're people. We're human, and we have flaws.
Yep.
Just because you're in a role of ministry doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that. My pastor has said continually that he makes mistakes. My mom and dad make mistakes. I make mistakes. Now, they're not intentional, but guess what? We mess up sometimes. So do we not extend the same grace that we want extended to us? Come on now.
Right.
You know what? Y'all can miss me with that at that point. And yeah, I'm upset because we don't think like that. We think, oh, well, that's them. They're in a special role, so they have to be held to a higher standard. Aren't we all supposed to be held to a higher standard, no matter what our office is?
And
it doesn't matter. If we're Christians, we're ministers. We minister. It doesn't matter which role, because guess what? Your sphere of influence is still important. No matter if your sphere of influence isn't as large as Pastor Todd's, it doesn't matter. It's still a sphere of influence. Right. You still have people that you can influence, that look at you and make decisions based on what you do, who you are, how you talk, what you say, and what you do.
And again, we're not talking about a sin issue.
No, we're not. That's even, that makes it even more upsetting, because it's not like the brother sinned.
Right.
He simply just made a mistake.
Man, I want to say something stupid so bad.
Do it.
No.
What are you waiting on?
No. Because I don't. Please forgive me, because I don't want to be disrespectful. And again, we live in an internet age, so even the joke that I wanted to make, people can reference and go back to and all that stuff. And I don't want to be disrespectful to to certain people.
That's all right,
but
Morris.
You know, like. I'm like, why didn't we call to cancel the pastor that was floating on the trapeze, the wires? Why didn't we cancel the pastor that had the horse that was pooping down the aisle? Why didn't we? You know what I'm saying? Like, why?
Why didn't we cancel the pastor that did a rap video that they lacked a lot of the melanin for, but did all the stereotypical things that you would expect of a stereotypical
black rapper?
Yeah,
I remember that.
If the stereotypical stuff wouldn't have been in there, I'm like, okay, bro, try to do your thing, try to do something different. But
nah, he went
all
the way in.
He went in with both,
from clothes to both gestures to. I was like, wow.
Like he got Hype Williams to direct it for him. So if we're going to cancel, let's keep that same energy, right? Let's keep that same energy across the board.
Just don't pick and choose which one you want to do.
And I think that is the perspective. We've got a lot of people. And I was telling my cousin this. I was saying this to her. You know, that is the challenge and the danger of a double standard. It causes you to become a god to yourself.
Right. Don't you start, bro?
Yeah, when you can hold one accountable for one thing and then give pass and mercy to this other one because you like what they give you.
Right.
Yeah, you are in a very, very dangerous place. You know, now that's obviously believers. There's people who follow a certain way. To me, that is something that I would definitely, to me, that needs to be a strong rebuke. The folks outside of the church, they just make me go like, you don't even. Why do you even care?
You don't even follow. Yeah. Why does it matter?
Why does it matter to you? I get it. See, if all I did was see and walked away, there's nothing I can say.
Right.
But you outside the building, you can't even get in anyway.
No, see, Darren, you just really tapped in, because I don't know if Kev knows this. I don't know Ashley knows this, Claudia, Corey. I mean, all the people that know me, they know that my biggest pet peeve, and this is why I've been so upset with this conversation and talking to people and saying, hey, look, look at yourself. My biggest pet peeve is hypocrisy.
Yeah.
That's my biggest pet peeve. I've said it to Ashley. I say it to any type of training class I'm in. I'm not going to tell you to do something that I haven't already done myself. Right. Ashley knows that's one of my mottos. I'm not going to tell you to do something that I haven't already done myself. So hypocrisy to me, you talk about gets under my nerves, gets under my skin and gets on my nerves. Oh, I'll come unglued. And I know God's working with me on that, but that.
Yeah. And so I've been watching on Facebook those that were very quick to post things.
Quick.
Now, I mean, like quick, like they saw it and immediately their first instinct was, let me go post something about it. I'm wondering how many of those have kept the same energy to quickly post his conversation.
They don't. Right? Okay, you know that's not going to happen. I mean, there was an example last year. And when I was in North Carolina last year to visit my mom and dad for, God, what was that last year? I don't even remember. It was for their 50th wedding anniversary. That was 2020. There was a shooting with somebody that had robbed a Domino's pizza. The first report that somebody I saw that posted on Facebook said, "Oh my God, the police here in Raleigh shot a kid with a pizza. He was just running with a pizza." Come to find out, it was a grown man, and they're already picketing. They're already saying, the whole thing with the police. I mean, they were going nuts already. She was posting stuff left and right, but it's right outside of her house. And then it came out that it was a grown man. He stole the pizza, and he had a gun.
Right.
There was nothing posted after that.
Yeah.
I mean, you posted all this stuff about how the police were terrible and they shot an unarmed black kid, but you never posted anything after that retracting everything that you had said before, because we don't hold each other accountable. We have no sense of accountability. It's like, oh, well, that I guess it's not true, but you don't go back and retract your statements.
The internet, the internet is
It's frustrating.
Well, I was going to say that we have the most powerful megaphone, pocket-sized megaphone on the planet.
Yes, we do.
Because we can literally shout to the world. The world is on fire. And if we do it in a compelling way, everyone will come watch nothing burn.
Right. That's true.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And and I'm glad you put that up there, because the other thing that we kind of keep skipping is as though it's all or nothing.
Right.
Either it's all good or it's all bad.
Right. It's no.
And that's not that's even how life works.
That's not life at all.
Both things can be true. It could be the demonstration was
bad.
Accurate. It was accurate as far as if you were reenacting what Jesus did.
Yes, it was.
But it was nasty.
Yes.
Was it over the top? Yes.
Yes.
Was it a sin? No.
So did it still minister to people?
Right.
Yes.
All of these things can be true at the same time.
Did it distract people? It still did both.
Right.
You can't tell me that didn't minister to somebody. You can't tell me that didn't happen. It ministered to somebody.
This is the thing that we also, my mother said this, she said, "Ooh, this generation just does not like the reality of the Bible." I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah. Ooh. And Morris, yes, we recognize, and definitely even Todd acknowledged that it hindered.
He did.
It hindered, and it overshadowed the message. It overshadowed Christ.
He did.
It
overshadowed everything.
That's
missed the whole point.
Oh, that's a given. Yes. But that's where that's at the keep for the I'm not talking about somebody that's not us.
Right.
As believers, people that have been in this thing for a while, we have to be mature enough to recognize, we know it was a hindrance, but it still did it help someone. We have to get we have to get to a place to where we just don't jump with the crowd.
Right.
We have to get to the place to we don't react like everyone else, because we're not supposed to. We're not supposed to be of that same cloth. That's not who we're supposed to be. Right. But unfortunately, we jump into that same mold and we react without thinking, without being without using common sense.
Right. Because I mean, here's the thing. Because I was talking to my wife about this series, like, "Are y'all ready for this show?" And I was like, "Yeah, we gonna go into it." If I just mention, and I'm not saying these names just to name drop, but if I tell you these names I'm about to mention, if they came to me, because these are folks that have either prophesied over me, lay hands on me, or I have submitted to in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So if Bishop Jakes, if Bishop McIntosh, if Miles Monroe, if Tudor Bismarck, if Dr. Matthew Stevenson, if Apostle Ryan Lestrange, if any of these men and others, the Hinton brothers from way back in the day in Chicago, if any of them came to me and said, "I want to use you for a sermon and I'm going to spit on you," I'd be like, "Whoa, time out. Love y'all." That's not happening. Okay. If I was caught off guard by it, if they didn't tell me and just said, "I'm going to use you," listen, there will be a conversation afterward, unless all of a sudden I dropped 150 pounds. If I'm 150 pounds after I got spit on, But at the end of the day, recognizing that with what happened, the goal he never he never put that my his spit was magical or holy or blessed, and so therefore was going to do anything. It was an illustration, yes, that was over the top. Did it take away? Absolutely. However, what we cannot do is dismiss everything concerning him
Agreed.
because of what he did, which I remember, and Darren, you might remember this, but I remember there was at the church that we were at in Oklahoma, which is now Transformation. Um, the leader at the time, Bishop McIntosh, was out of town for a Sunday, and there was a guest minister that came and did an illustration. And in the illustration they did, they had like a sacred cow or what have you, that they had like a kind of like a pottery of, right, clay figure or what have you, and they smashed it on the platform, and pieces of this clay went all over the place. And I remember having a conversation afterwards, or being in part of a conversation where that was like, y'all didn't think that through. Y'all didn't think through the clay going up. So understand that illustrations sometimes don't always work the way that we want them to work. Sorry, I can just speak to that as a pastor. Sometimes the illustrations don't work.
You're right.
Was this over the top? Yes. Could it have been better thought through? Absolutely. But can we now say, you know what? He's learned. We've learned.
Can I play devil's advocate just a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Not saying again, I'm just because people are like, he's surrounded by yes men, and if and no one can stand up to him and tell him when something, and I'm like, it's quite possible he didn't have that conversation with anybody.
It's probably possible, yes.
Number one. Number two, other than his brother,
right?
Number two, I could see in his mind, again, I'm just speculating, but I could see in his mind how this wouldn't have been that bad when you've got babies and you've had babies for years. Spittle is just life. Seriously.
Right.
So the idea of how far to go with that.
No, yeah, I get it.
You know what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is, we take things a little too far to always ascribe negative intention with people who do things we don't like.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he, you know what? Yeah, probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah. That was a mistake.
Yeah. Right.
But we live in an age where we just have no tolerance for mistakes, and even situations where, I mean, we can look at sports and see that.
Right.
Oh yeah. We can look at life and say that.
I mean, Morris, let me say this, Tori, real quick. Morris, you're right. I do think that it will follow him. I think that for a while be kind of, but here's the thing. I think that may be the blessing in the curse with this, is that now more eyes will be watching, because you're going to have people that will tune in just
to see what's going to happen.
Who he going to spit on today, what he going to do today, right? And for Todd, for Mike, it's going to give him the opportunity to again demonstrate that was one portion of my life. Because here's the thing, say what you will about Mike Todd, what have you. One of the things I know, even he talks about, he brings up his mugshot for when he was arrested for, was it insurance fraud? Mm-hmm. So he's gonna point out his flaws,
right?
And so a year and 2 years from now, people may still be talking about it, but he's also, I believe, will have the opportunity to build more credibility to say that was a moment.
Watch him not even do that. Watch him not even do that. Watch him take it even a step further. This is where I made the mistake. This is how this went wrong.
Right.
This is what I learned. This is what you should not do. Because you're absolutely right. There has been nothing about Mike Todd's life that, and don't get me wrong, he knows the difference between private and secret.
Right.
He doesn't really do a whole lot of secrets. Now, what's private is private.
Right.
Okay. But he doesn't do a whole lot of secrets, especially when it comes to a past type of life. So if he's willing to expose where he was trapped in sin, Why would he not be able to use a mistake for an example? And the question is, will it follow him? Yeah, it's gonna follow him for a minute.
Oh yeah, it's gonna follow him.
It's gonna follow him for a minute.
Yeah, let's not be naive about that. Yeah.
It may follow him for quite some time, but at the end of the day, I agree with you. The results of, because again, even though we have no tolerance for mistakes, we love controversy.
Oh yeah,
people do. Yep. Hey,
love it.
Can you
Can't get enough of it.
Can you put Ashley's comment back up there again?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I read it right. I don't see. I don't think. Okay, so I think this speaks back. It says, I will say I don't think that.
First of all, let me just say my wife looking good right there. If you just listening, I'm just telling her looking good right there. It was hot.
Kev, we know this. But
I know, right?
You do your thing, Kev.
Complete commercial break.
You do your thing, Kev. You do your thing. But Ashley, I'm gonna use this illustration, and this is for everybody, not just Ashley, but it was Ashley's comment. And you're gonna remember this illustration or this example from the Cosby Show, because you love the Cosby Show just like I do, even though the man did some stuff that was bad. But anyway, it was an example of what was it Vanessa's boyfriend that was older, and was it Dabner or whatever his name was?
Dabney.
And he Dabness. He had the example of presenting him like a steak, but on a trash can lid. It didn't negate the steak. It didn't negate Nabis. It didn't negate who he was. The presentation was off. So look at what Pastor Todd did. It doesn't negate his message. So we can't say that it didn't help anybody. I guarantee you it helped somebody, because they may have been questioning, okay, God, you just told me to do this. I don't know. I don't even know if I want to do that or not. We can't say it didn't help anybody, because he was still ministering. Now, did it overshadow it? Does it have a life of its own? Of course it does. And Pastor Todd admitted that it overshadowed the whole message. But we can't say that it didn't help anybody.
Right. We
can't say that. We can assume, but we can't say that it didn't. Because if we take the message for what it was, then we have to say that even myself, if there was an illustration that I came with before one of my training classes, and the illustration did not work and it fell flat on its face, it doesn't mean that the things that I was teaching before didn't matter and it didn't make a difference. It doesn't mean that it negated everything else. So we need to be really, really careful. And it goes back to what I said before. We have to be mature enough to not throw everything out and just say it didn't help, or that the whole sermon was not of God, or it didn't help anybody. We have to get to the level to be mature enough to realize that it was still a message. Did he do something that he admitted and said that it was over the top? Of course he did. But it doesn't mean that it didn't minister to somebody. It doesn't mean that it didn't help somebody. It doesn't mean that it didn't speak to somebody.
Right.
It may not have spoken to us personally or anybody, but it doesn't mean it didn't speak to anybody. We have to be careful with that.
So
is it possible?
Go ahead.
Is it possible? Because the other thing that I believe, God will lead you to do something that totally embarrasses, exposes, puts you in feeling like compromising positions, when we're not talking about sin, but he will put you in situations where walking away from it, I didn't think that was going to be the result. I was expecting something positive. I was expecting something uplifting. I was expecting to come to another level. My best is next, and all of that. And yet we somehow forget that he's also the God of positioning. Yes. That is not necessarily always going to position you in a great place in order to get what he wants out of it. And a lot of times I'm just like, how many of us are willing to take the risk to actually allow God to make us look bad?
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, not many of us. I saw Morris's post, and I get where he's coming from. But man, we gotta read the whole Bible and the whole thing. Listen, God could have got Jonah to that island a different way other than that
that
fish.
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But he needed that fish.
Yes.
For the later on illustration of Christ coming out of the grave.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Dude, that's we can go down the list of Bible characters that were put into situations that were less than favorable, admirable. They weren't planning on going that way. I really don't think Samson wanted to be blinded.
Right. I don't think Job wanted to lose his family.
You know what I'm saying? My whole point is, and I don't think Jesus, Jesus, knowing the sensitivity of his followers, he has a massive crowd of disciples, and he says, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no place with me or in me.
Right.
And the majority of them are like, oh, that's it. That's all I needed.
Yeah, we're not talking about cannibalism, people.
Right.
Well, but they didn't know that.
No, they didn't know that,
and didn't stick around for the explanation.
Nope.
Here's the other though. If we're looking at it, no, we're not that God told Todd, right? I don't know. I'm not part of his.
Oh no, and I'm definitely not.
Yeah. No,
right.
No.
I don't know if he did or didn't. Yeah.
Right. But and yes, Jamalo, definitely very.
Oh no, can
better ways to illustrate it, right?
We agree 100%. And guess what? He agrees with that because that's that was one of the things he put out later on. So no, I agree.
But here's the thing: is that God still can take this and turn this around for good, right? If we're going to quote the scripture, he can. All things work together for good. Even your mess ups, even your mistakes, I think that yes, the eyes are going to be are going to be on him for quite some time. Yes, and if you're just coming in and joining in, we are all in agreement. The spitting, and as my wife put it, the hawk spit, right, was nasty.
Terrible.
It was something that and if you don't know, the young man that he did that to was his younger brother, Brentham. So it's not as if he just chose someone randomly out of the crowd. Doesn't make it better or worse. Just again applying facts and situation.
I wonder if the reception would have been different had he had Brentham do it to him.
That's a good question.
Or
still would have been nasty.
Because
his wife do it.
Because the power dynamic does come into play with this,
right?
Whether people subconsciously
being submissive, doing whatever they tell you to do.
I'm the senior pastor. I'm the one dehumanizing the guy that's not.
Exactly. Right. No, I get that.
Had that been looked on a little different, had just the same hawk.
One, it still would have been nasty. Two, it wouldn't have gone viral. It wouldn't have gone viral.
They probably would have said, "Man, that's crazy."
Yeah, not as much as it has.
Nasty.
I still would have said it was nasty.
That, I think it would have been flat. I agree with you. I think it would have just been absolutely flat because it's not the senior pastor Michael Todd who's been on television and radio and books. And,
there go them preachers again.
Right.
Because that's how the headlines have been reading. If you've been looking on because even TMZ picks this up, right?
Oh yeah.
So this is not just church news, if you will.
This is all over the place.
Circles. TMZ, Shade Room, you name it. I think I even saw CNN and the Today Show. So everyone has been having conversations about this. And yes, it has always been, all basically been mega church or pastor spits on man, what have you. So all of this, yes, as far as how it's been presented, has been in the way of that power dynamic, just to kind of speak with your point, Gary. And then Tori, just to go back to something you said, I think for one of my next sermons, and baby, if you're watching this, write this down. I'm going to create a sermon or have a sermon illustration where I actually cook a steak and put it on a garbage pail and have someone eat it and force them to eat it. That's going to be the sermon illustration that I may find to use. Thank you for that, Tori, from the Bill Cosby Show. And I'm joking, folks, before you all get it up in arms and try to have anything. I'm joking.
I can see it already.
You saw my face. I'm like, wait, save that for when I visit.
Right? Exactly.
But
Yes.
yes, so Tori, yeah, so Morris, yeah, actually,
Man, yeah,
hours explaining to
yeah.
the say, and so it does give an opportunity. That's another thing. It does give an opportunity for us to understand.
Conversation with people we
But
would
here,
probably never have that conversation
they
with.
wouldn't.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
and he's one of my best friends. We talk about this all the time because if we also cycle in what Pastor Todd did the next day with admitting his fault, it brings back into the human element that guess what? Just because we believe what we believe, just because we're pastors or worship leaders or whoever, whatever it is, it doesn't mean that we're untouchable. It doesn't mean that we're unreachable. It means, guess what? We jack some stuff up sometimes too. And it allows us to have that conversation to say, hey, look, I know there's a whole lot of us that put off this aura that we don't make mistakes, that we glow in the dark, that our stuff doesn't stink, that I wake up speaking in tongues. I know a lot of people give off that aura, but that's not real life. That's not realistic. So it opens up the door to have that conversation to show, look, we're human. Right. If anybody here that has kids, you can't tell me there's been something that you've done and you messed up, but it still doesn't keep your kid from loving you.
Right.
It still doesn't keep your kid from listening to you. It still doesn't keep your kid from listening to your instruction, especially if you go back and say, hey, look, I jacked that up. I've done that to Ashley before. Yeah, I messed up. Because what? It builds trust. It builds credibility. It allows you to be human, and it allows you to be reachable. Jesus's ministry, the big part of his ministry was being reachable.
Bro, one of the things that, forgive me, one of the things that I've noticed, because we are definitely changing eras. When it comes to voices of influence, particularly coming from America, we are definitely changing eras. In the previous era, preachers, their testimony
and error, yes,
and error,
yes,
but their testimony had always been all of the right stuff that they had done.
Right.
My wife is the only woman I've ever kissed. We lived off of $3.50 miraculously for 6 years, while God miraculously sustained us as we were starting our ministry. And that, they had all of these dynamic, sacrificial, perfect life type stories. They had never done anything wrong,
right?
No mess ups at all. Cause it's like, okay, so you were perfect and then you got saved. How does that work?
Right. That's what I mean by unreachable. You're not relatable.
But that's my point. So here we go now into this, and this kind of goes back to my whole point about the setup of God. So now he allows Mike to, and this is just, again, we just talking, but he allows Mike to go through what he goes through. He does what he does. How many pastors at this stage and at this level turn around and don't hire a PR firm to figure out how to spin it and the press releases and all this stuff, but actually just get online and say, hey,
oops,
I was trying to say one thing.
I messed up, y'all.
I messed up bad, y'all. You're absolutely right. Everybody, I'm here to validate your feelings. The level of humility that it takes to simply say,
that.
Right,
I messed up. We haven't seen that.
We don't see that. Even in the real world, when people do stuff, we still don't see it then. We're expecting people to come out and say, hey, look, yeah, I messed up. And we still don't see it.
Man, they go quiet.
About the church.
Well, you mean he couldn't just say, well, my feed was hacked and that wasn't me. That was editing.
Right. Y'all don't trip. It was CG. It was CG, technology. What can I tell you?
Spit, it was Alka-Seltzer.
Right.
We did it. It was an illusion. We did, it wasn't
green screen effect. Yeah. No,
I messed up. And that, to me, that also speaks to the fact that, and like you said, you wind up trusting the guy just a little bit more.
You do.
And I see people, I see people who were like, do we accept his apology? I'm like, really?
and at this point, it's either you do or you don't.
It's either or.
Going back to what I said earlier, either you rocked with him before, and again, I'm not, because there's levels to it. Like you said, Tori, there's those that rocked with him. There's those that couldn't stand him. And there are those in between who don't necessarily have an opinion one way or the other, but are looking at this and saying, okay, what's my response? And I think for those in the middle, those that are mature have to look at this and say, he did go that far, but he also came back and made some corrections, some statements regarding that. So at least I have now something to evaluate on a full circle, right? Instead of just taking one moment, a 3-minute clip out of this man's life and trying to, like we said, cancel him over what's for some people might have been their first experience, their first encounter with him and his ministry.
And more than likely, because of the level of how viral it really went, you know.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Morris. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, what he literally could have let this whole thing die down.
He could have.
You know,
or he could have put out, he could have tweeted something, or he could have
tweeted something.
No,
he also could have waited and addressed it over the pulpit and made it an official, thing with music and mood lighting and all that. He addressed it immediately.
He addressed it head on.
Less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Yeah.
Something Antonio Brown hasn't done. But anyway, sorry.
Oh, we can run down the list of people that haven't done.
That's a whole that list is deep and wide, bro.
I mean, I've already given the list of pastors that if we're going to cancel Mike Todd, need to be canceled well in advance of Mike Todd, right?
Oh yeah.
I've already given that list. Do I need to give that list again? All right.
No.
And that's Darren, you and I both, because you know some of the same things that I know, that I could even add names to that list or add situations to that list, right?
Bro, there were pastors that we know, bishops, like head of whole movements, who up to about a year before they passed were in extramarital situations. And nobody, as far as everybody was concerned, this was the man of God. That's my spiritual father, and because they did, and so my point in saying that,
absolutely, Morris,
we can't afford to pick up the small stuff and then lose perspective.
That's right.
Now, with that said, again, we're still saying the same thing. Yes, it was horrible. As far as the grotesqueness of it, it was bad. It just looked bad. It turned people off. It turned their stomachs. It did all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, it was a bad look.
It's a bad look.
It was a bad look. Yes.
But it's on the grand scheme of things, people have done worse to folks in private. Give me a break. I'll leave that alone. Anyway.
Yep.
Give me a break. I shall deserve it. I don't know why that popped into my head.
All good.
Nell Carter.
Listen, here's the thing. Tori, I don't know if you know, but I think in songs sometimes. So sometimes I have to bite my tongue from actually just belting out songs.
I do it all the time.
Have conversation because there's lots of songs that
Amy literally said to me, "Do you have a song for everything?" And I went, "Yeah, kind of, sort of." Just to be honest, yeah, it happens all the time.
Yep. I haven't met a singer or a rapper or a poet that does not have that. And if you're artistic in any way, something like that is in you. So, yeah,
it's the way it is. I embrace it.
Yep.
At the end of the day, people have to make their own decisions as to what they're going to do with that.
Right.
This is for a lot of people going to be the test of offense. For a lot of people, it's going to be the test of offense. The reality is this is going to be the news cycle for a very short period of time, and then we're literally going to move on to something else.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So perspective is the only thing, keep it in perspective.
Yes. Yeah. And here's the thing. We don't always have to be the first one to respond, post our feelings or thoughts. Sometimes you need to sit with it for a moment, right? I think one of the things I was looking at is, again, I know for me, and I'm speaking for myself, when I saw it, did I have a response? Absolutely. Did I have thoughts that were running through my head? Absolutely.
Of course.
But I did not feel that it was appropriate to come onto something and immediately post without letting it sit. Because again, we have to, the same grace that we want for our lives, we got to provide it to other people.
We have to.
And again, I point out again,
Man, I've been spat on. This is what I just thought about that. I've been spat on in the name of ministry.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're not going to talk, and I still, Darian, you know who this is. Tori, you may know, but I still will not sit there and even though I question things about this person, the fact that my wife and I were literally called dogs and animals by this person, all because we were sitting there watching them go through their, at that time, 5th accusation of extramarital affairs and trying to figure out if we wanted to continue leading within that. And I'll just simply say it was not anyone that I've served as far as Greenwood, right, or even in my
anyone
current
that you've
context.
mentioned,
right?
I can concur. That is, he's not mentioned any names. Everybody, so
and you won't hear it. Now. If you know my background, you'll know what I'm referring to. But I'm not putting it out there because again, I'm not going to put that out there. They've got to answer to God for that, right?
Exactly.
But I've had that happen to me in ministry, and I had to be mature enough to say, because there was even a time, Darren, you can attest to this, that I was like, God, I love you. I don't know about your people.
Bro, that's real talk, bro.
God, you and I, we good.
That's real talk.
Your people.
Hey, there's been a couple of them said, if I see you on the street, it's a wrap.
But then,
I'm just being honest.
To be able to go from that and say, okay, you know what? That was a moment in time that happened with that individual. I don't have to subject myself to it. I don't have to go back to it.
That's right.
And that was the result of, in that case, sin. That wasn't just a bad decision, right?
Right. Exactly.
When we're talking about what we're talking about now with Todd, we're talking about a bad decision that he has acknowledged was a bad decision, has apologized, and there's a whole other conversation of apology versus acknowledgement, because the apology, in my opinion, is being made to a lot of people that he does not need to apologize to. But that's a whole other conversation.
That is a whole other conversation. But he did acknowledge, though. I mean, so that acknowledgement to me is just as important, if not even more important, than asking for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to grant forgiveness anyway, even if someone didn't ask for it.
Exactly.
But when you acknowledge it, that goes, that for me, that's huge.
I need you to stop reading the Bible. I don't know what Bible you're reading. Let me put it like that.
We reading Red Letter Bible.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, because
how dare I?
How dare you?
We paper Bible saved over here.
I don't. All them love scriptures that
how dare I speak truth? Is that what you're saying?
Them agape scriptures about not keeping a record of wrong and stuff.
Hey, if you go to present your offering and find yourself with alt against the brother,
where's my Hammond B3 at right now, boy? Come on now.
Again, I don't know what Bible you read, sir.
So,
Mr. Man,
Pastor,
no, pasta.
So, listen. All right, listen. We've reached our time. Listen. I would encourage you, if you're here at the end and you missed any part of it, go back. It'll be up on my Facebook page. It'll be up on the YouTube page,
on the YouTube channel,
YouTube channel. Chop it up. But this is a conversation I think that was. We like to keep it funny over here. We like to keep it, authentic, everything. But this was something that I felt that we just needed to dedicate the entire time to, just to have the conversation, because it was a lot that we've seen transpire just in a period of about 24 to 48 hours.
Yes.
All right. Well, listen, that's it for this episode of Chop It Up. We'll see you next time. Have a great one. Be blessed.